Patagonia covers 800,000 square kilometers. That's nearly the size of Turkey, yet fewer than 2 million people live there. In some areas, sheep outnumber people by more than 10 to 1. This isn't just a quiet corner of the world, it's one of the most sparsely populated regions on Earth. And the big question is, why? The southern half of Argentina, vast, beautiful, and mysterious, stretches across plains, mountains, and coastlines. It's a place of open skies and dramatic landscapes, but also one that remains largely untouched by dense human settlement. Despite its natural resources and sheer size, Patagonia supports only about 1.9 people per square kilometer. That's far below Argentina's national average, and far below most habitable regions on the planet. To understand Patagonia's silence, we have to dig deeper into the climate, the history, the land, and the choices people made long ago that still shape it today. A landscape of extremes. One big reason Patagonia remains so empty is its extreme landscape. To the west and south, the giant Andes Mountains rise sharply, with peaks like Cerro Torre and Mount Fitzroy standing like stone towers. These mountains aren't just tall, they block clouds and shape the weather across the whole region. On the west side, near Chile, rain falls often, creating thick forests and deep cold lakes. But on the eastern side, it's the opposite. Dry winds blow over wide plains and deserts, where rain almost never reaches. This split creates two very different environments. One too wet and rugged, the other too dry and barren. Even in the south, places like Tierra del Fuego have sharp mountains in one part and flat, windy plains in another. Because of these sharp contrasts, it's hard to build towns that connect across the region, and people end up living in small, scattered pockets. This natural divide in the land is one of the biggest reasons why Patagonia has never filled up with people, even after all these years. Harsh climate. Patagonia's climate is one of the biggest reasons people don't settle here in large numbers. The region is cold and dry most of the year, but what really makes life hard is the wind. Strong westerly winds that blow constantly. In summer, daytime temperatures might reach the 70s degrees Fahrenheit, but at night they often drop into the 40s, and the wind makes it feel even colder. In the south, winters are long and harsh, with freezing temperatures that can drop below -15 degrees Celsius or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. These winds aren't gentle breezes. They can reach speeds of 120 kilometers per hour or 74 miles per hour. Even when the sun is shining, the wind chill can lower the feels like temperature by over 7 degrees Fahrenheit. This makes everyday life more uncomfortable, drives up heating costs, and can even damage buildings and roads over time. There's also another hidden danger. Patagonia sits under one of the biggest holes in the ozone layer, which means UV rays are dangerously strong, even when it's cold. So, between the relentless wind, bitter cold, dry air, and harmful sun, Patagonia's climate adds up to a place that's not only hard to farm, it's hard to live in, period. Water scarcity. Water, or the lack of it, is one of the most important reasons why Patagonia remains so empty. Much of the land here is dry, with desert-like soil that can't hold water well. Over half the region is covered in aridisols, the kind of soil you'd expect to find in a desert. Rain is rare, and many old riverbeds have dried up completely, turning into salt flats or sandy basins. Yes, there are some big rivers, like the Chubut, Negro, and Santa Cruz, but they only help small parts of the region. In fact, the entire province of Chubut depends on just one river to support nearly half its people. These rivers create what scientists call agricultural oases, where irrigation makes small-scale farming possible, but only in narrow strips of land. Outside of those river valleys, there's simply not enough water to grow crops or support large communities. Without widespread access to water, Patagonia cannot support the kind of farming that usually brings people to settle and stay. Economic capacity. Most of the region's economic activity comes from sectors like sheep farming and oil and gas extraction, both of which use large amounts of land but employ relatively few people. Sheep farming, once dominant, has declined sharply, with numbers falling from over 21 million sheep in 1952 to just 8.5 million by 1999. Ongoing issues, such as underinvestment in modern abattoirs and phytosanitary restrictions on meat exports, and continue to limit the sector's growth. Meanwhile, oil and gas extraction is capital intensive, rather than labor-intensive, focusing employment in just a few urban centers like Neuquén and Comodoro Rivadavia. Even the major shale development at Vaca Muerta, one of the world's largest, concentrates jobs in limited areas and does not generate dispersed rural employment. While there have been attempts to diversify Patagonia's economy and expand infrastructure through private investment and targeted development plans, these efforts often remain small-scale or face delays due to national economic instability and environmental concerns. This structural limitation is a core reason why much of Patagonia, despite its natural wealth, remains sparsely populated and economically fragmented. Transportation networks. Argentina has built an impressive national transportation system with paved highways, railways, ports, and airports connecting many parts of the country. But when it comes to Patagonia, the vast size and extreme terrain make things far more difficult. The region stretches across deserts, high plateaus, and the towering Andes, which makes building and maintaining roads or rail lines incredibly expensive and slow. While cities like Ushuaia and Rio Gallegos are reachable by air, smaller towns remain isolated, and overland routes are often limited, underdeveloped, or in poor condition. Historically, small ships served the southern coast, and planes still provide access, but this kind of travel is expensive and impractical for daily life. Outside of a few urban hubs, much of Patagonia lacks strong regional infrastructure, making it hard for people to move goods, reach services, or travel for work. This isolation directly reduces economic opportunity and makes rural settlement far less viable. In many ways, the continued reliance on air travel isn't a sign of convenience, it's a sign that roads and rail simply can't bridge the distances. Communication systems. While Argentina has expanded its fiber optic networks and mobile coverage in recent years, Patagonia remains far behind the rest of the country in digital access. In 2010, only 4.5% of internet service contracts for companies and organizations were located in Patagonia, a clear sign of limited digital infrastructure. In many parts of the region, high-speed internet is still unavailable, and average connection speeds are about 15% slower than the national average. Cell phone coverage usually works inside towns, but it often vanishes completely once you leave the main roads or enter wilderness areas. This lack of reliable, fast communication networks creates a serious barrier for people living in rural and remote parts of Patagonia. It also blocks the development of remote work, tech jobs, and other industries that could support population growth beyond farming or mining. In today's world, where being connected is essential, this digital divide deepens Patagonia's isolation, not just physically, but socially and economically. Until these communication gaps are closed, the region will remain far less appealing for younger people, professionals, and families looking to build a future. Public services. In Patagonia, access to public services is uneven, with a sharp divide between cities and the vast rural areas. In major urban centers, private healthcare can meet Western standards, but public healthcare is often unreliable, especially for those who depend on it full-time. Outside of these cities, public services become scarce, and long distances make even basic needs like medical care difficult to reach. This creates what experts call an urban oasis effect. Only a few cities have the resources needed to support a stable population. Beyond healthcare, Patagonia's national parks are praised as part of its green infrastructure, offering protected landscapes and recreation. But park management must constantly balance tourism and conservation, and these green spaces don't solve the basic service gaps in rural life. Education, transportation, and emergency services also thin out quickly once you leave the city limits. For families, older adults, and anyone with health needs or children in school, these gaps make rural Patagonia an impractical place to settle. History. In the late 19th century, Argentina formally incorporated Patagonia through a brutal military campaign known as the Conquest of the Desert, displacing indigenous groups like the Mapuche, Tehuelche, and Selknam to make way for national expansion. The government publicly promoted colonization, especially under laws like the 1876 Avellaneda Act and the 1940 Colonization Law, which promised land to European immigrants and settlers. But in practice, these policies were undermined. Instead of distributing land to small farming families, vast tracts were privatized and handed to politically connected elites and foreign companies, often for speculation rather than settlement. Indigenous populations, which were originally semi-nomadic and had no permanent agricultural villages, were largely displaced or destroyed, especially the Yamana and Selknam of Tierra del Fuego. Even after colonization, new towns grew slowly because there was no strong local population base to expand from, and no real system in place to help immigrant settlers become landowners. Instead, the land was concentrated in extensive sheep ranches that required few workers, reinforcing a low-density economic model from the beginning. By the early 20th century, provinces like Rio Negro and Neuquén still had mixed populations, with over 40% indigenous ancestry, but lacked the infrastructure and institutions needed for large-scale development. In short, Argentina's inconsistent colonization policies and land distribution failures created a long-lasting demographic void, and that's a key reason why Patagonia remains so sparsely populated today. As we've seen, Patagonia's low population isn't just about distance or cold winds. It's a mix of tough geography, harsh weather, a dry landscape, and decisions made long ago that still affect life today. Even with efforts to grow its towns and bring in more people, Patagonia remains one of the most remote and least populated places on Earth. But that's also what makes Patagonia so special. It's one of the last great frontiers of the modern world. A place where nature still rules, and life moves at its own pace. Thanks so much for watching. If you've ever visited Patagonia, or just dream of going someday, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you again on the next adventure.